Balaam's donkey speaks. Imagine you're riding your donkey, and suddenly it turns its head and starts talking to you. Not braying, actually speaking words. No magic, no illusions, just a divine override straight from the heavens. Balaam was a prophet for hire, summoned by Balak, the Moabite king, to curse the Israelites. At first, God tells Balaam not to go, but after persistent messengers, God allows it, but with strict orders. Speak only what he commands. So Balaam saddles up his donkey and heads out. But here's the twist. God sends an invisible angel with a drawn sword to block the path. Now, Balaam can't see the angel, but the donkey can. 3 times the donkey swerves off the path, crushes Balaam's foot against a wall, and finally just lies down in the road. Furious, Balaam beats it. Then comes the miracle. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and it said to Balaam, "What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times?" Numbers 22:28. And Balaam doesn't even flinch. He talks back to the donkey like it's normal. But the real shock? Suddenly Balaam's eyes are opened and he sees the angel standing there with a sword, ready to strike. The donkey had saved his life 3 times. The sun stands still. Joshua 10:12-14. A man once stopped the sun, no tools, no tech, no telescope. He just looked up and commanded, "Sun, stand still." And it did. Joshua, the new leader of Israel after Moses, was in the middle of a fierce battle. 5 Amorite kings had joined forces to crush the Gibeonites, Israel's allies. Joshua rallies his army and marches all night, catching the enemy by surprise at dawn. The battle goes in Israel's favor, but daylight is running out, and Joshua knows if night falls, the enemy escapes. So in front of his army and under the open sky, Joshua prays the unthinkable. Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon over the valley of Ajalon. Joshua 10:12. And then the impossible happens. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. V 13. The day was supernaturally extended. Time itself bent so Joshua could finish the battle. This is the only recorded time in the Bible when God alters cosmic motion in direct response to a human voice. Verse 14 says, "There has never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a man like this." Some scholars believe this miracle was a perception event, like prolonged daylight due to weather, while others cite ancient Chinese and Egyptian records mentioning an unusually long day, suggesting global awareness of this anomaly. Either way, the message was clear. God paused the universe for a battle he wanted Israel to win. The floating axe head, 2 Kings 6:5-7. Imagine this, you're chopping trees by the river, your axe flies off the handle, sinks into the water, and you panic, not because of the tool, but because it was borrowed. Then a prophet casually throws a stick into the water, and the iron floats. In the time of Elisha, the prophet, a group of young prophets were building a new place to live near the Jordan River. One man borrowed an axe to help, valuable and rare back then, but as he's chopping wood, disaster. The iron axe head fell into the water, 2 Kings 6:5, and he cries out, "Oh no, my lord, it was borrowed." This isn't just about tools, it's about honor, obligation, and survival. Losing someone's property could cost your reputation or worse. Elisha calmly asks where it fell. Then he cuts a stick, throws it into the river at that exact spot, and suddenly, the iron floated to the surface. This miracle breaks both physics and symbolism. Iron doesn't float, ever, especially not in fast-moving river water. But more than that, the act of using a wooden stick to raise iron from a river has layers of foreshadowing. Some scholars see this as a sign of redemption. What is lost, what is weighed down, can rise again by divine intervention. Also, Elisha's miracle here isn't flashy, it's humble, but it reveals a God who cares about the smallest anxieties, even a borrowed tool. The earth swallows Korah's rebellion. Numbers 16:31-33. One moment, they were shouting against Moses. The next, the ground beneath them split open and they were gone, swallowed alive. No war, no weapon, just divine judgment from below. Korah, A Levite wasn't satisfied with his duties in the tabernacle. He wanted more. He wanted the priesthood itself. So he rallied 250 leaders of Israel and confronted Moses and Aaron. "You've gone too far. Why do you exalt yourselves above the Lord's assembly?" This wasn't just rebellion, it was a spiritual coup. Moses, heartbroken, fell face down and said, "Tomorrow the Lord will show who is holy." The next day, each rebel brought a censer with fire and incense before the Lord, and then came the warning. Moses told the community, "Step back from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." Moments later, the ground under them split apart, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them and their households, along with all their possessions. Numbers 16:31-33. They fell into the pit alive, and it closed over them. Aaron's rod buds, blossoms, and produces almonds. Numbers 17:8. What if a dead stick, dry and lifeless, suddenly bloomed, not just with flowers, but with fully ripe almonds overnight? This wasn't magic. This was God making a point, loud and clear. After Korah's rebellion, yes, the one we just covered, people still doubted Moses and Aaron's leadership. So God gives a solution. Have each tribal leader bring a staff. Write their name on it. Aaron's name goes on the tribe of Levi's staff. Place them all in the tabernacle before the ark. The man I choose, his rod will sprout. So 12 dead staffs are placed overnight. The next morning, Moses walks in and sees the impossible. Aaron's staff had not only sprouted, but had budded, blossomed, and produced ripe almonds. Numbers 17:8. This wasn't gradual growth. It was a miracle of accelerated life, a dead object blooming in stages all at once. The almond tree is the first to bloom in Israel, a biblical symbol of watchfulness and divine authority. In Hebrew, almond, shakt, is related to watch, shocked. So God wasn't just choosing Aaron, he was sending a message of vigilance and divinely appointed order. Even more profound, this rod, Aaron's blooming staff, was placed inside the Ark of the Covenant alongside the 10 Commandments and the jar of manna. It became a permanent reminder that divine leadership isn't earned by popularity, but chosen by God himself. Water from the rock, Exodus 17:6 and Numbers 20:11. The people were angry, the desert was dry, and their leader was stuck between stones and screams. So Moses struck a rock, and a river burst out of solid stone. The Israelites were deep in the wilderness, and the water supply was gone. Again, tensions flared. People were panicking, accusing, demanding. In Exodus 17, early in the journey, Moses cries out to God, and God responds with the clear command, "Take your staff, strike the rock at Horeb, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." Exodus 17:6. Moses does it, and it works. A miraculous spring gushes from a rock in the desert, a lifesaver. But this story has a second chapter and a darker turn. Fast forward to Numbers 20. The same problem, no water. But this time God tells Moses, "Speak to the rock, and it will yield its water." Numbers 28. But Moses, exhausted and angry, loses his cool. Instead of speaking, Moses struck the rock twice with his staff. V11. And yes, water still came out, but God wasn't pleased. Elisha purifies the poisoned stew. 2 Kings 4:38-41. A deadly mistake. A prophet's stew turns toxic. The men scream, "There's death in the pot," but one handful of flour, and the poison is gone. During a famine, the prophet Elisha returns to Gilgal, where a group of prophets is gathered. Food is scarce, so someone goes out to forage for wild plants to make stew. He finds a wild vine, gathers its gourds, slices them up, and tosses them into the pot. Here's the problem. He had no idea what they were. 2 Kings 4:39. The men start eating and immediately shout, "There is death in the pot, O man of God." V40. They'd been poisoned. Panic sets in, but Elisha doesn't flinch. "Bring me some flour," he says. He throws it into the pot, and just like that, they ate it and there was nothing harmful in the pot. V41. No antidote, no purging, just a miracle. Manna from heaven. Exodus 16. You wake up in the middle of the desert. There's no food, no markets, nothing. Then you step outside your tent and the ground is covered in something white, thin and flaky, like bread from another world. The Israelites had just escaped Egypt, but freedom came with hunger. In the wilderness of sin, the people began to grumble. Would we had died in Egypt, at least we had bread there. Exodus 16:3. God hears and responds in an unexpected way. I will rain down bread from heaven for you. Ver 4. Each morning, when the dew evaporated, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. Ver 14. They called it manna, which literally means, what is it? It was white like coriander seed, tasted like wafers made with honey, and it fell 6 days a week with a double portion on Friday, because none came on the Sabbath. They gathered it daily, and if anyone tried to hoard it, it would rot and grow maggots by morning. Quail covers the camp. They had heavenly bread, but they craved meat. So they whined, they wept, and then God sent a storm of birds. But what started as a feast ended in a graveyard. The Israelites had been eating manna for a while, but now they were tired of it. We remember the fish in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the garlic. Numbers 11:5. So they cry out to Moses, "Give us meat." Moses, overwhelmed, turns to God. And God's answer? They want meat? I'll give them meat. Not for 1 day or 2 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of their noses. V20. And then the miracle hits. A wind from the Lord sprang up and drove in quail from the sea and let them fall all around the camp. V31. Birds covered the ground 3 feet deep, as far as a day's walk in every direction. The people gathered tons of it. They cooked, they gorged. But here comes the twist. While the meat was still between their teeth, before it was chewed, the Lord struck them with a severe plague. V33. Many died right there, and the place was named Kibroth Hattaavah, the graves of greed.